Governor Henry McMaster on the latest developments for Hurricane Irma.
Let's take a listen.
Irma's forecast to turn northward Saturday night, then make a potential landfall in southern Florida late Saturday night or early Sunday. The forecast has shifted westward since this time yesterday, with the official track taking it northward across the Florida peninsula through early Monday. This interaction with land will cause Irma to weaken as it lifts northward toward the area. Irma is then expected to move northwest across Georgia Monday and Monday night. While this track will bring less significant impacts to the state, there are a few things to remember. One, the wind fields will become larger as the storm lifts north, and the impacts from the storm extend a great distance from the center. The heaviest rain and highest threat for tornadoes is on the right side of the track. Any shift to the east, which is certainly possible as the storm is still 3 days out, would bring much greater impacts to the area. In terms of impacts, even with the track, storm surge inundation of low-lying coastal areas is likely along central and southern portions of the South Carolina coast due to persistent strong onshore winds and higher than normal tide levels. In fact, coastal flooding is already occurring in some parts of the Lowcountry. If the storm were to track farther east than currently forecast, which is a possibility, storm surge flooding could be significant. We will continue to work with the Hurricane Center throughout the day to refine the storm surge forecast, which is potentially one of the greatest impacts we can see. We should also mention the tropical storm force wind gust, potentially strong enough to cause scattered damage to trees and power lines, could occur throughout the state. The best chances for the strongest winds are south and west of Interstate 26. These winds will also likely result in some power outages. Significant amounts of rainfall are possible, which could lead to localized flash flooding, and minor to moderate river flooding is also a concern toward the middle and latter part of next week. So we ask everyone not to let your guard down with the latest change to the forecast. Significant impacts could still occur across the state, and it's important to follow the advice of local emergency management officials. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions about the weather? The weather report, predictions?
Any heights in terms of storm surges possible?
We're going to work with the Hurricane Center today to try to refine some numbers and be able to give you a little more detail this afternoon. But with the track of the storms to the west, we're still concerned that we could see some storm surge flooding, and we already have higher than normal tides right now causing issues. So we want to refine those numbers some before we...
Where is that flooding occurring now?
I believe along portions of the Charleston County coast. I heard of some reports of homes potentially being undermined from the rising water levels there. Normal flood-prone locations, but right now there are already some strong winds pushing those water levels a little bit higher than normal.
With the release of water from the dams upstream, is that also causing the inundation problem? Is it affecting it at all?
No, that's not impacting the inundation that we're seeing along the coast. That's just due to the onshore winds and the higher than normal tides. Any release on the dams would have an effect on the rivers, but right now we're not expecting anything to get really above minor or moderate flood levels on the area rivers.
But the two joining at the coast isn't contributing at all?
No, shouldn't be a factor.
By undermining houses, what he means is the water is under the house.
It's reaching the homes. And some of the spots that typically experience flooding when we have higher than normal tides. So, but we are already seeing that, and we expect conditions to only worsen as we head through the weekend, especially by Monday.
Okay, thank you. Briefly, the Team South Carolina has already been introduced to everyone, and of course we're still doing, and we're in the same status as we were yesterday. That is that, number one, there are a lot of additional vehicles on the South Carolina highways, particularly I-95. As you know, this hurricane is coming up through Florida and Georgia, and with its apparent turning to the west, that means Georgians are not going to the west, but they're turning more towards the north and the east, which brings them right up I-95. So there's going to be a lot of extra traffic on South Carolina roads, highways. Yesterday there were about 27,000 extra vehicles, more than normal, and today there are about 65,000 extra vehicles, more than normal. So there's a lot of traffic, and what we urge South Carolinians and others to do, if you don't need to get on that highway, don't need to get on these big highways that these pass-through visitors would normally take, try to do that. Go another way, and let's try to relieve some of that traffic so they can get on through as quickly as possible. Also, the Department of Social Services and Red Cross have 52 shelters available in 12 counties. These are 45,350 capacity there for evacuees. We have 2,400 National Guardsmen on duty to assist in the evacuation, as we stated yesterday. Also, as stated yesterday, we have 2,358 state and local law enforcement officers on duty for the evacuation. Also, we have 432 SLED, DNR, and probation, pardon, and parole agents assigned to assist local law enforcement right now. So the whole team is out there. They've been mobilized. They're ready for what comes next. The decision has been made by the Team South Carolina professionals to ensure the safety of every South Carolinian. Everything that we are announcing or doing is based on a lot of information, all the most available and best, most reliable information. For that reason, we are delaying the final decision on evacuation orders until after we receive more information about the hurricane at 5 o'clock this afternoon. That's when we'll get another full comprehensive report on the hurricane from the National Hurricane Center. And sometime around 6 o'clock or so, we hope to be able to make an announcement about evacuations. But I need to say and need to make it clear, if we had to evacuate the whole coast starting at 10 o'clock tomorrow, as we are prepared to do, we are prepared to do it. No one is leaving. Everyone is still at their post, and those plans have not changed at all to be prepared for that eventuality. There are a couple of things that have changed somewhat. One is about school closings. I mentioned yesterday that we would have to consider a statewide order closing schools in South Carolina. We do not think we need to do that now, so I'm not going to do that. The decision on school closings will continue to be made by the school districts themselves. Many school districts along the coast have already made their closing decisions. Also, in the same theme, the state government offices, it's true as well, the state government offices will follow this closing policy. That is, the policy is to close when and if the county government where the office is located decides to close. That's for the state offices. In the question of the health care facilities, based on new information, I have rescinded the portion of the executive order issued yesterday that required the mandatory evacuation of health care facilities for some of the counties. Not all, but some. I have rescinded the portion of that executive order requiring the mandatory evacuation of the health care facilities in these counties: Horry, Georgetown, Berkeley, Charleston, and Dorchester. Again, it is rescinded as to the health care facilities in Horry, Georgetown, Berkeley, Charleston, and Dorchester. It remains in full force and effect as to the others in that executive order, and those are Beaufort, Colleton, and Jasper counties are still under the evacuation order for the health care facilities. What are health care facilities? They are hospitals, nursing homes, assisted living facilities, alcohol and substance abuse hospitals, and similar types that are listed in the executive order. Further, I have directed Secretary of Department of Transportation Christy Hall to immediately suspend the tolls, that is the fees for the Cross Island Parkway that's located on Hilton Head Island. I mentioned earlier we're going to have a lot of Floridians and probably Georgians as well joining us over this weekend, so let's be good hosts, and let's also be careful, men and women of South Carolina. If you don't need the gas in your vehicle, don't get it. We don't want to start a run on these filling stations. There are reports here and there of people filling stations selling as much gas in one day as normally they would in a week. It's just not necessary to do that. You don't need to keep your vehicle filled up right to the brim. You don't need to top it off every day. Just keep a decent supply of gas in there and we'll be all right. And there'll be plenty of gas for those people coming through that are going to need to gas up somewhere in South Carolina to keep on moving to their ultimate destination. That's all we have for right now. And now I'd like to call on Christy Hall, Secretary of the Department of Transportation.
Thank you, Governor. As the Governor mentioned, we are seeing increased traffic flows through the state. We reported yesterday about 27,000 additional traffic loads on our highways. That number has increased by an additional 65,000 as of today, so we're looking at, excuse me, more than 92,000 additional vehicles traveling across our interstates in the South Carolina. There are pockets of congestion across the state. I-95, sections of I-26 are congested, as well as US 321. Traffic is heavy, however, it is moving. We have deployed our State Highway Emergency Patrol, our SHIP units, as well as our maintenance units, and Highway Patrol is assisting as well on those routes to help keep traffic moving. And we've moved to 24-hour operations along those routes to make sure the traffic continues to move. Our rest areas and welcome centers are also operating at 24-hour capacity. And as the Governor mentioned, when and if there's movement out of the areas, make sure you plan ahead. I encourage you to sign up for our 511 app if you don't already have it. It has real-time traffic data that's available to the public. And our call center at 1-855-GO-SC-DOT. That's 1-855-467-2368 is available to assist any motorist make travel arrangements. Thank you, Governor.
Director Smith, Department of Public Safety.
Thank you, Governor. Good afternoon, everyone. As the Governor stated earlier, we are still in position to implement lane reversals in all three region evacuation zones should the need arise. We've heard about the influx of traffic here in our state from out-of-state travelers, so we have instituted line patrols, putting our troopers on the interstates, whether it's 95, I-26, and your major highways to help manage that traffic. We've also staffing some of the traffic control points to help, again, manage that the traffic, working with some of our law enforcement partners. I could not overstate the importance of the clearance of our roadways, so we focus on quick clearance of collisions and disabled vehicles to get those vehicles off the road as quickly as possible, partnering with the South Carolina National Guard. We are utilizing their records to clear the roadways expeditiously should those vehicles obstruct the normal flow of traffic. And just on a final note, since we have a lot of out-of-state travelers in our state, I just would like to remind the motoring public two things. Number one, please move over for emergency vehicles, for we'll be responding to different types of calls for service. And the second point is, if you're involved in a minor collision, please move the vehicle from the roadway. It keeps the traffic flowing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Mr. Wilson here from DHEC. Yes, sir. If you please.
We have been moving forward with evaluating any requests for waivers for the medical emergency evacuation order. Currently, for the remaining counties that are in the order as it exists now, the three hospitals have requested a waiver request. We're in the process of evaluating those at this point.
General?
We're good to go.
He's good to go.
Sir, I'll
Mr.
just
Simpson?
say one thing is in the personal preparedness area, still a good resource is our hurricane guide, which is available on our website. It's got a lot of preparedness tips as you might prepare for evacuation. And our website itself, scemd.org, has a wealth of information there. So I highly recommend you go there. It's got know your zone information. You can type in your address, find out if you're in a zone.
I could ask you about the shelters real quick. Are they still in a preparedness state? Can you staff them all up quickly? Is that process, like the road, still viable?
Yes, sir. That's still all ready to launch if the evacuation order is given.
All of them, or with the schools going back to school, would that change your plan?
Well, this proposed evacuation time right now is maybe Saturday. and schools are closed, so we shouldn't have any problems at all in opening those, the ones that the governor just talked about.
Governor, tell us about what you're weighing personally in terms of to evacuate or not to evacuate. Does traffic from the other states factor in? How does maybe anger at being evacuated over potentially not needing to? What are you?
Well, those are the kind of questions that come up every time we have a storm. People don't like to leave their homes and businesses, and as little as they like leaving them, they want to get back to them immediately. And actually, there's a lot more concern and disruption in trying to get back than there is in getting out. It's slow to get out, but often to get back in. Of course, you can't get back in until the evacuation orders has been lifted. And people often don't understand that although it may look clear, it's not, because you have trees down, you have electrical lines down, you have all sorts of problems that we don't want to exacerbate by having people driving down the roads and going into their homes. So we have, as I've said before, we have a team of real professionals that fortunately or unfortunately have had a lot of recent experience with these kind of things, both with a flood and a hurricane. And we are as prepared as we can be. But it's always a question of the safety of the people. That's always the question. And sometimes there's a little bit of inconvenience involved with being sure that you're being safe. Yes, ma'am.
Governor, you mentioned that there were some shelters open in 12 counties, correct? That are on standby to open in 12 counties?
That's right.
Which counties are those?
Those are the ones sort of in the middle of the state. I don't have them a list. They're not in the low country. They're on outside of the zone of danger and the high water and all that. We can provide that information. Let me mention this also. We don't have the blue hurricane sign today. We still ask everyone to be sure to follow those signs upon evacuation. If and when we have evacuation. Follow those signs and don't go by Google, don't go by social media. Follow those signs and follow the official sources, because there's a lot of, you ought to see all the people that are just in this building, not to mention those on the team around in the counties who are collaborating and sharing information to come up with the very best information that we have. So everybody take a look at those signs and follow them.
Governor, when
Yes,
does the
sir.
timeline for evacuations, that sort of thing, start changing? Can you give us kind of a,
It hadn't changed yet.
well, when did we start looking at the possibility of this not being what we were thinking?
Well, it has never changed. We've said from the beginning, and everyone has been watching the same weather maps. Maybe we have a few more access than the average citizen, but we've been watching them assiduously with teams of professionals all over, and you never know where a hurricane is going to go. This one appears on the trajectory that it is on now to be headed a little more to the west than we thought, but we could wake up in the morning, it could have doubled back on us for all we know. That's why, as we mentioned earlier, we are still mobilized. We still have the law enforcement, the emergency people, the National Guard. Everyone is still in place. We haven't budged.
Depending on how
What
far
advice would
that,
you give to families who are evacuating to this area with pets? I know a lot of shelters don't allow families with pets, and a lot of hotels don't. So what advice would you give to those families?
That's why you have to plan ahead. That's why we're urging people to make telephone calls, find out which places do allow pets, which don't. Be sure to understand that you may not be going home for an indefinite period. We don't know when it's going to be, and we don't want to add to the problem by having people with pets that don't have the medicine or don't have the right food or whatever they need. So it's every individual is going to have to do that. There are messages and things on television and various sources that have information about where pets may go in some hotels and things. But that's something the individual is going to have to do. But the main thing to do is just understand you have to make those decisions, make those preparations, and go on and get it done now while we got some time.
Is there some concern that with the Floridians and Georgians moving north, that if we wait to call for an evacuation, it may make a standstill on the roads?
No, ma'am, we don't believe so. We're watching this very closely, and the routes for getting away from the coast are clearly marked, and we will have signs and messaging that can be changed and tailor-made in an instant to try to get the flow of traffic to go here or to go there to prevent exactly what you're saying. But what we urge everybody to understand right now is, and until we say otherwise, they should plan on and for an evacuation order tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Now that's been our position all along. Now we may change that, but they should not change their preparations until we change our announcements on that.
Are the lane reversals on I-26 and I-95 dependent on the evacuation orders?
Yes.
Or could there be lane reversals without evacuation orders?
Depending on the track of the storm, is there a possibility at least some parts of the state won't have to evacuate?
Possibility.
Do you have advice for those people to stay safe in their homes if they're not required to evacuate?
If I would urge everyone to use caution, and they need to protect themselves. And as it stands now, we're urging them to be prepared for an evacuation order at 6 o'clock this evening, when we get information after 5 o'clock this evening, from the full weather predictions and reports and more details. But as from now, just as our mobilized professionals, law enforcement, National Guard, and the others I mentioned, they're still on duty and they're on the scene. Everyone else should take that same kind of precaution.
And where can people park their cars at higher ground? Will there be garages made available?
Ma'am, that's one that people will have to make preparations for, but we know one thing for sure. The ground is higher the farther you get away from the coast. So get away from the coast.
Are there any areas in the state, like Myrtle Beach, for example, where you can take evacuations off the table at this point?
We're not taking anything off the table at this point except for the mandatory evacuations of those health care facilities. And that's not all of them. They are in some counties, but we're remaining in Jasper, Beaufort, and Colleton. They are still under the evacuation.
You mentioned people didn't need to go fill up their cars with gas. Are you concerned about a shortage in the state?
I am concerned about spot shortages due to a panic. I mean, we've been through these things before. You got to be reasonable. You don't need a full tank of gas if a half a tank will get you all the way to Spartanburg. Any more questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming. We'll have more later today.
All right, again, you were listening to Governor Henry McMaster live from Columbia. The biggest takeaway, I believe, Dean, out of this was that we are expecting an announcement to be made at some point later today. Once that 5 p.m. advisory comes down, they will review the weather forecast and then make a decision if there will be an evacuation from there.
Right. So yesterday, or I guess 2 days ago, he said he didn't want to make a wild guess, but he would guess that evacuations would be Friday. Yesterday, he said he was 99% sure that they would happen tomorrow morning, and now today he was delaying the decision to delay the decision. So I think what you said is that he's going to wait for those 5 o'clock coordinates to come out, and then it seemingly said that he would have an announcement coming up at 6 o'clock. So I would imagine they're waiting to see if this storm continues, the projected path of the storm continues to track west, that they would probably not call for an evacuation.
Well, let's get the latest on that path from our meteorologist, Dave Williams. He's joining us in the Weather Center. And Dave, many people, of course, breathed a little bit of a sigh of relief today, and some good news for the state of South Carolina, but of course anything could change.
But we shouldn't breathe a sigh of relief. We really should not, because this just changes the impacts a little bit. We're not looking at a direct landfall here, but what we are looking at, we're switching over to a heavy rain situation And we're also going to see the possibility of tornadoes, plus we're going to see probably some saltwater flooding, which would be minor close to the coast. And it's all because of Irma. There is Irma, the latest on Irma as of 2 p.m. We haven't gotten a new forecast cone. That comes out at 11 o'clock and 5 o'clock, but we do get new coordinates, and that includes the wind speeds, which are up. Back to 155, 2 miles an hour more. It's back up to a Category 5 storm. Right now, just barely under that limit. Westerly movement at 14 miles an hour. For days, it was moving off to the west-northwest at 16 miles an hour, so we're starting to see that little bit of a slowdown here. As it starts to slow down gradually, that would indicate to me that maybe eventually here it's going to start to make that turn into our Saturday, but it's still moving along at a pretty good clip, just off to the north of Cuba, and it hasn't really hit any major significant land yet. And I know there are a lot of islands out there, but they don't have much elevation, so that's nothing to tear this storm apart. Once it moves into Florida, that's some land that can slow this hurricane down and also start to break it up a little bit. Our forecast models and what everybody is talking about is the jog to the west. How about that? The jog to the west just updated in our computer model, and there it is. We're looking at all of the models right over top of the Florida Peninsula. Notice we're over here in Charleston, and there they are, the models continuing to push all the way up the entire length of Florida. Think of how devastating this is going to be for the folks of Florida, especially on the strong side of the storm, the eastern side of the storm, from Miami all the way up to Jacksonville as those feeder bands come in off the ocean. And that leads me to my next point. It's going to be off to our west, so we're still going to have those feeder bands coming in over top of us with a storm off to the west. And I've stressed over the last several days that these tropical systems thrive over water. They want to stay over water. When they're over land, they're not doing so well. So what's going to happen is it's going to try to suck as much moisture as it can in off the Atlantic Ocean, even while it's back here around Atlanta. And I remember Hurricane Francis, which moved up through Atlanta, and every time one of those feeder bands came through, we saw tornadoes. So that's going to be a huge concern as we go from Sunday into Monday. I think Sunday will be okay, but late that night into Monday, we're going to start to see the heavy rain picking up. We're going to see the tornado threat picking up, and also some of the swell from that storm will be headed in our direction. So that's what we're really going to watch out for. So here are some of the things. The model trends, I've been telling you that all along. And the trend for the last few days, off to the west. That trend continues, and that's why we're feeling much more confident in giving you some of the impacts that I was rather hesitant to give you before because I didn't want to give you any wrong information. The jogs in the forecast track, that's what we're going to see over the next few days. Little to the east, little to the west, and the intensity is going to be highly dictated by how much interaction it has with Florida, but at this point it looks like it'll stay over land, but it may try to get back out over water, whether it's the Gulf of Mexico or the Atlantic Ocean. We'll just have to watch that as we go into our Sunday and it tracks up across Florida and toward Georgia and even in our direction. Hurricane Irma, Category 4 storm, but barely. It's almost a Category 5. It's going to move off to the west, very close to the northern coast of Cuba. And we saw it slowing down a little bit. It's going to make more of that turn to the north, 150-mile-an-hour winds at 8 p.m. on Saturday. Here we are, Sunday, 8 o'clock in the morning. That's Key West. This is the Everglades, southwestern Florida. Miami over here, and Miami would be on the strong side of the storm. The worst impacts would be felt right about here at the tip of Florida, and then if it continues right up over the entire length of Florida, notice there is some room for this storm to continue to move to the west. That would put it out over the Gulf of Mexico, and instead of seeing a Category 4 or a Category 1 up here, we still could see a strong, maybe even a major Category 2 or Category 3 or 4 hurricane. Instead of 75-mile-an-hour winds, we could be talking about 130-mile-an-hour winds if it stays over water. So there's still a lot of scenarios that are available and need to play out over the next several days. And then as we get into Tuesday of next week, tracking off to the west, The low country no longer in the cone, but if it does track all the way on the eastern side of this cone, we'll feel even more of the impacts, and then it falls apart in the Tennessee Valley. As far as what we could see, if it does track a little farther to the east in the National Hurricane Center's forecast cone, our threats would be tropical storm force winds, and I do think we're going to see some tropical storm force winds on Monday. We're going to have minor surge concerns, tornadoes, and heavy rain. But the last two there, those are the threats even if it takes the western edge as well. Heavy rain, isolated tornadoes, but now you're not looking as much in the way of wind or that surge. Most of that would be absorbed into Florida. Here's what we know about Irma. It's still a major hurricane. It's going to make that turn to the north. Our area is not in the cone anymore, and impacts, not only expected impacts are coming, it's going to be mainly that rain and our tornado threat. That'll be late Sunday through Tuesday. The exact timing of that turn, still unknown, but it's going to be sometime on Saturday. Whether it's a little bit earlier or a little bit later, that turn will come. The exact track, not nailed down just yet, but we'll continue to watch it ever so closely. The future intensity of the storm, like I say, if it gets over water, it could stay a little bit stronger. And the degree of the impacts, we're starting to get a clearer picture, but as far as how much rain we're going to get, still haven't actually determined the exact amount, but we'll watch that very closely. So with Hurricane Irma, make sure your family plan is ready, your emergency supply kit is stocked, and make sure to have the yard cleaned up because we are expecting some tropical storm force winds. And like we say, there is going to be another update from the Hurricane Center, which will update that track. That's coming out at 5 o'clock, and we'll have that update for you, and we'll bring you anything as we need to throughout the afternoon, Dean and Ashley.
In case I missed it, hurricane force winds sustained or gusts? If it stays on the projected path?
If it stays on the projected path, I'm thinking tropical storm force winds. So anything over 35 miles an hour. Hurricane force gust, I don't really see us getting up around 74 mile an hour gusts, even on the path it's on now, unless that's contained in a tornado.
All right, Dave, we will check back in with you here shortly. It is 2:50 here on this Friday afternoon. We are about 10 minutes out from a press conference scheduled with emergency officials within the Tri-County area, Charleston County, Dorchester County, Berkeley County. And they are expected to address the media sometime around 3 o'clock this afternoon. But if you are just joining us this afternoon here on television or on our social media sites, we just heard from Governor McMaster, the big takeaway there, that a decision will be made sometime around 6 o'clock this evening on those evacuation orders. A little shift in his tone from yesterday, where he said he was about 99% certain that those evacuation orders will take place. He still wants to stress to the people of South Carolina that could still happen, but he wants to wait for that 5 p.m. advisory and take a second look at that.
Let's give you an opportunity if you have any questions or concerns about this storm and how it may impact where you live. We do have some phone numbers we can pass along to you, and we will keep those up on the screen so you have time to grab a pen and jot these numbers down, because a lot of the questions that we've seen on our Facebook page and other social media sites and emails being sent in is, what are the impacts going to be here? And we have said, and Dave has said all along, we will probably know more by Friday, and I think we have a better idea today. But again, these are the numbers in your county. If you live in Berkeley, Dorchester, or Charleston County, you can call them. If you have any questions, any concerns at all, give them a ring. This is City of Charleston, 973-7219. I know the Isle of Palms also just released a phone number as well. We will get that up to you on the screen. And here, of course, is the City of North Charleston.
Many closures still coming into our newsroom as well today. Of course, we told you about all those school closings that were announced yesterday. All the local school districts in our area closed today through at least Tuesday. You can find this full list. It's running right now on our website at abcnews4.com. Something else the governor mentioned in that press conference just a few moments ago, 92,000 additional vehicles on the state's roads right now because of all of the evacuations going on right now in Florida and Georgia. People trying to escape and are trying to get out of harm's way. Many people in South Carolina, in our area, I've been reading on social media, have already made the decision to just go ahead and get out of town.
And I think that was one of the problems that he addressed with ordering an evacuation here, is that you've got all these Floridians and Georgians coming up this way. They see the track of the storm possibly heading west, so they're going to come north and east, which would drive them into our area. I thought it was interesting today that it was almost like sitting around getting a lecture from one of your uncles, right? You don't have to top off your gas tank, the governor kept saying over and over and over. If you can make it to Spartanburg on half a tank of gas, then just use half a tank of gas. He said that way there will not be a run on fuel. Somebody asked him if he was concerned about a fuel shortage, and he called it, I think, a spot shortage.
He did.
So, you know, if over the last couple of days you've seen what that means, you know, there's certain places with gasoline, certain places without it. But he said there are stations around town, and this I believe, that they're selling as much gas in one day as they would do in a whole week.
He also discussed there is congestion right now on I-95, US 321, and parts of Interstate 26 en route to Columbia. So be mindful of that. If you have to take those roadways today, pack your patience, be prepared to sit at least for a little while. Something else out of that press conference this afternoon, we heard him say that he went ahead and rescinded the mandatory evacuation order for healthcare facilities, nursing homes, and hospitals for Horry County, Berkeley County, Dorchester, Charleston counties, and Georgetown counties. They are still, however, in effect right now for Beaufort, Colleton, and Jasper counties.
They did just rescind the Colleton County evacuation, and you know, interesting about that, I spoke to one assisted facility today, and they were going to start evacuating their clients out at 2 o'clock today, sending them up towards Columbia. So, you know, he spoke around 2:30. I would hope that word got to them before that. But he also talked about the school district situation. Yesterday in the press conference, he said that all state schools would be closed on Monday and Tuesday, and I think that caught some districts by surprise. Today he said that state government offices or districts would make that decision. It would not be a state decision. So if you live somewhere out and about outside of Charleston, Berkeley, Dorchester County, those school districts will make those decisions as well.
He also touched on the 52 shelters across the state that will be made available for folks if they do need to escape. It will house about 45,000 people, those 52 shelters within 12 counties of South Carolina. We've received a lot of questions from our viewers wondering, well, can I take my pets to these shelters? So typically how this situation works is each county has a designated pet shelter. I know last year when we were dealing with Hurricane Matthew, for instance, the pet shelter in Berkeley County was Cane Bay. So we will find out, of course, in the next day or so if those shelters do in fact open, which ones will be the designated pet shelters.
I know people were also asking yesterday about shelters for if they had children or someone with special needs. I know Westview Primary has been designated here in Charleston County, that if you have a special needs child or a relative, Westview Primary is the place to go if you are searching for shelter there. So, you know, it's been a very interesting week. You go back all the way to Harvey and say 2 weeks, but especially with this storm, as people saw it continue to grow and get stronger and stronger, and then start to take a track into either the southeast, definitely into Florida, and it's difficult because there will be, you know, there's always those who will second guess government leaders and school districts about why did you call school off on this Friday? Why did we cancel school on Monday and Tuesday? And I think that's what Governor McMaster is trying to do by delaying. I think he's just trying to push this off as long as he possibly can so he doesn't have to order that evacuation. I've talked to a lot of people who said, you know, they've canceled their plans to leave town. They were either going to go up to North Carolina or the upstate, and they're going to sit back and wait and see. And that's how I feel like when he spoke today. And even yesterday, you know, they're just unsure. They don't want to feel like they're making the wrong decision. Want to make the best decision for the people in the Low Country in the state of South Carolina. So that's why they're waiting for the 5 o'clock coordinates, and then we'll make some kind of announcement at 6. But what happens if it's the same track? Right?
Great question. We're gonna have to go from
let me
there.
ask Dave real quick.
Yeah.
If it's the same track, right? And congratulations, you're the governor, right? You know, I mean, but that's the situation they're in, because if it stays the same track and everything remains the same, you know, the impacts here, how comparable would they be to Matthew?
Not very comparable at all.
We would be better off than what we experienced with Matthew.
In general, yes. In short, yes. Short answer, yes. Long answer, we're still going to feel some major impacts.
Right.
I believe that press conference may be beginning to start with Charleston County leaders. Okay, we are waiting to bring that up now. We want to refresh your memory. We have some citizen hotline numbers that we want to pass along to you. These numbers, if you live in these areas, go ahead and jot them down, because they will come in handy over the course of the next several days. If you live in Berkeley County, Dorchester County, Charleston County, North Charleston, anything you need at all. If you have concerns about shelters, roads, evacuations, call these numbers. They will be staffed 24/7. When we heard from the governor earlier today, he said, of course, don't let your guard down. Still go ahead and get your family prepared. If you have not made those arrangements, go ahead and do so. Get that hurricane kit supply ready to go. Know where your nearest shelter is. He mentioned that there are 2,000 plus National Guardsmen that will be deployed to help with those evacuations if they do in fact happen. He discussed as well the public safety. Okay, we do have that live picture now of that press conference with Charleston County. Let's take a listen.
This is Kathy Haynes.
For your area, for you to leave, so when and if the governor issues that evacuation order, then you'll be ready to go. I do want to tell you that we are ready. Charleston County, the Tri-County area, we are still progressing on as if this, we were going to feel the brunt of this storm. We are ready to go when the governor says when he orders that evacuation. We do not know what time that's going to be. As he mentioned in his press conference, he wants to wait till after the 5 p.m. advisory from the National Hurricane Center before he makes that decision. But no matter what, the Tri-County coastal area and the state of South Carolina is ready to go whenever he makes that decision. Being prepared, Charleston County has their own hurricane guide, and in here, you can download it from our website for charlestoncounty.org, and in here it has information to help you not only with your evacuation routes, but how to be better prepared for this storm or any storm. As I mentioned, we are ready to go. Our shelters are ready. All we have to do is pull the flag down and say, okay, get them open. And again, that is all based on the governor's order. And he is the only individual in the state of South Carolina that can order an evacuation. And I emphasize order, okay? I'd like to end by saying just don't let your guard down, all right? Just continue monitoring the local media and continue preparing and continue making the decisions you think are best for you and your family as it comes to this storm, okay? And at this time, I'd like to bring up Chairman Jay Byers from Dorchester County.
Thank you, Kathy. Good afternoon, everyone. Dorchester County went to OPCON 2 at noon today, and as Kathy mentioned earlier, that's just a mode of getting ourselves even more prepared. I fielded a couple of phone calls today, and I just want to clear up a few things because a lot of people were asking why you go to OPCON 2, yet we're not ordering evacuation. The governor has held off on ordering that evacuation. It's important for folks to realize we're not out of the woods yet. So from that standpoint, your county governments, your local governments, we're still doing everything we can to get ready. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we're in a position to do what we need to do. You need to be in a position to evacuate if necessary. If the governor orders that, be ready to go. But right now, we're in a position where you can watch the storm. We've seen the track change, but it can also change back. So it is something just from a clarity standpoint. Yes, we're at OPCON 2 because we're still going to see some type of event. We're still going to get some rain. We're still going to get some wind, and we're going to be ready for that, especially in Dorchester County. We've seen some low-lying flooding the last couple of years. We know where those areas are. County Public Works has gone out and cleaned out 60 miles of ditches as much as we can to get ready for that, and it's important that folks know that we're doing those things. Sandbags, we got those out at noon today. We were done in an hour. So if you're a Dorchester County resident, those sandbags are going quick. We'll try to get some more out for you tomorrow. The other things with Dorchester County, we did have an emergency meeting today. And in that meeting, we passed an emergency resolution so that county staff, if necessary, we can go to a curfew. That is for your safety and for the security of your home and your valuables as well as your loved ones. So if we do go to that curfew is meant to keep people off the roads so that our sheriff's departments can make sure that people are not where they're not supposed to be, but also to keep our first responders safe. Once sustained winds get over 39 miles per hour, we will pull first responders. So if you're out there in that type of event, you will not have help coming to you immediately if you need it. So it is something that when we put that curfew out there, it's important for you to be able to recognize it and respect it and stay indoors. The only other thing that I would say is, from the standpoint of Dorchester County, we want to wish you all to be safe. We want you to be able to get out of here and pay attention to the governor when he makes that announcement. If he does announce that it's time to evacuate, please do so. If you decide to stay, be prepared, as we said yesterday, be prepared for possible days without power. We know that storm trajectory right now has taken a little bit of a westward turn. It may come back this way. And regardless, we may still see some events that put you without power. If you decide to stay, you better be prepared for it. And then when it's safe to get back out, roll up your sleeves, let's go to work helping our neighbors. Thanks, everyone. God bless you.
Okay, at this time, Public Information Officer Hannah Moldenhauer. I was going to call it Mosley, but that's not.
Yes, it's Hannah Moldenhauer. I think a lot of us woke up today and throughout the day we've seen the tracks and we've been breathing a little easier, but certainly not time to breathe a sigh of relief yet. Today and tomorrow are critical, and like they said, certainly not a time to put our guard down. And while the current track is good news for many in the Tri-County area, it also makes our decisions a lot more difficult. So Berkeley County leaders, Tri-County leaders, the decisions we've made thus far are decisions we feel are in the best interest of the citizens. Now, Berkeley County is currently operating at an OPCON level 2, and that decision was made at noon today. We do anticipate going to OPCON level 1 tomorrow, and that would mean our emergency operations center would be staffed 24 hours. Berkeley County offices are closed today. They will also be closed on Monday, and on Monday we will make the decision whether we want to close them additional days. Another big message is we've seen this movie. We know that the low-lying areas often flood. If you live in a low-lying area in Berkeley County, we are urging you to temporarily relocate because we do know that this storm will have impacts, especially on those low-lying areas. As far as shelter information goes, no shelters in Berkeley County have been opened yet. When and if the governor gives the evacuation orders, that's when we'll make a decision. We will identify the shelters at that time. We do know if we have to open a shelter, we will not have a pet-friendly shelter. So if you are planning on leaving or if an evacuation is ordered and you plan to take your pet with you to a shelter, please, please make other plans. We do know that we will have a medical needs shelter open again if that order is given by the governor. As far as sandbags go, over the last 3 days, 50,000 sandbags have been distributed in Berkeley County, and that has been from 22 different fire stations. It's a lot of sandbags. Our citizen call center is still open, manned right now until 7 o'clock, and tomorrow morning we will start, hopefully, that 24 hours answering any calls that you have. I'm going to say that number one more time. We said it yesterday. It's 843-719-4800. Again, we are hoping that this track will continue to shift, but we are preparing for otherwise. Thank you.
Okay, at this time I'd like to invite Chief Mitch Lucas to come up and speak on behalf of the Sheriff's Office.
Whether there's an evacuation order given or not, we're going to be on our emergency watch list beginning in the morning at 6 o'clock and probably run through Monday into Tuesday with it. The biggest reason is the flooding that's already been mentioned here. We've got a little over 100 miles of coastline, a lot of low-lying areas in those, along those coastal rivers and streams and creeks and everything else. I think the rest of the police departments, law enforcement agencies in Charleston County are going to follow that same rule. May alter it some come Monday, but right now we're going to be in emergency mode. And let me throw a lifeline out. If we do open shelters with the governor's command, we have a pet-friendly shelter. And if you're from another county and there's not one available there, we'll be glad to help you all out with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, Trooper Bob, you'd like to come speak about the evacuation?
Good afternoon. As far as the Highway Patrol, we are still ready. As I stated yesterday, we're still on standby waiting the governor's orders. Just two issues down here that I saw today. I drove through I-26 westbound just west of Somerville. I did see some congestion around the 199 mile marker, the Somerville exit, and that's because it's going from 3 lanes into 2 lanes. But once you get past that point, it's back up to interstate speeds. The interstate congestion you'll see is mainly on I-95. coming into our state. I can't imagine anyone going southbound, but there's a overturned tractor trailer right now in Jasper County at the 19-mile marker southbound. Troopers are working to clear up that collision, but it should be clear here shortly. We're working to clear it up, but I can't imagine why anybody would go southbound. But you'll see a lot more congestion and more traffic on I-95 than you will see on Interstate 26.
Thank you. Lieutenant Zorn with the Coast Guard.
Good afternoon. I want to give a quick update on the port condition. We're continuing to monitor the forecast, and we're going to provide updates if there's going to be a restriction or closure if needed. But we're going to try and do that as late as possible to facilitate commerce. We also want to let everyone know that the Coast Guard is pre-positioning our people, boats, and aircraft so that they're ready to respond immediately after the storm hits. And then finally, for all of our boating public, stay off the water. Heed those watches, warnings, and advisories so that you're safe and that we can respond afterwards, because our capabilities are going to be restricted during a storm like this. Stay off the water, stay off the beaches, and heed those warnings. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, I would like to add one more thing too. Again, social media is a key thing that we are using. We're utilizing it to our benefit, and so is my counterparts here. Facebook, Twitter, Charleston County has their own, emergency management has their own app that you can download for free. All of those are means of people getting the correct information, okay? Please, as I mentioned earlier, listen to the officials here, and just kind of, overlook anything anybody may post or whatever that is not a part of the official group here. So at this time, I guess I'd like to open it up to questions, if you have any, for any one of us up here.
There was mention during the governor's press conference today that there was already some flooding in the area. Do you guys have any more details about that?
We have actually we have not heard of any in Charleston County. I don't know if my counterparts here have heard it, anything in their county. But as of right now, one thing we need to also keep in mind is it's a full moon this weekend also, and it's already projected for astronomical high tides. That's above and beyond, or what the storm may cause. Okay, and one other thing too I want is storm surge. People talk, I want to explain storm surge is when they say 3 feet of water, 8 feet of water, whatever. They're talking about from the ground level up. Okay, is what storm surge is. So if whatever the footage they say that we could experience in this area of storm surge, just compare it to the height of your body and determine whether or not you need to get out of that area. Okay, we strongly encourage, as my counterparts up here have said, for people that if they live in a low-lying area and they don't feel comfortable staying where they are, to relocate to another location. Okay, if we open shelters, those will be announced as to their locations to include the pet shelter. Okay, but until then, we're not, we don't announce the locations because they're not open yet. Any other questions?
In the event of county shelters opening, what kind of identity or identification do they need to bring for those shelters in a specific county, or does it matter?
Well, they should have at least some form of identification for entering, because they do get kind of registered, if you will, into the shelter. So there need to be some sort of identification. Yes.
But I'm sorry. But if they live in, say, Charleston County and they're trying to get in a shelter in Dorchester County, is that going to be possible?
It should be, as long as they have the space. Because I mentioned yesterday, and my Berkeley and Dorchester counterparts here understand this, but we don't have a whole lot of shelter space in Charleston County alone. And so they are aware that there could possibly be Charleston County residents going into their shelters also.
Kathy, yesterday we heard that Charleston County would have up to 5 shelters. Could we hear from Berkeley and Dorchester on how many shelters you guys plan to have?
I can hit that real quick, and I meant to do that earlier. I apologize. So Dorchester, we're expecting to have 7 shelters to be open if the governor issues that order. And we actually are going to identify one as pet friendly, and that site is to be determined. So we should have that out there shortly, and it'll be on the website, which I meant to also mention, DorchesterCountySC.gov/Irma, and you can find a lot of information there that'll help
direct people to the right place.
And we also anticipate opening about 7 shelters.
Any other questions?
Are there any estimates right now what storm surge could look like for the area?
No. It's really hard to tell because, again, it's too far away for us to even know that. Any other questions?
Kathy,
Yes, ma'am.
There's definitely a different mood today. You know, from 24 hours ago, I talked to people who are sitting there with their boards cut under their windows, saying, you know, I'm not going to bother now. Again, I know you've alluded to this, but how quickly this all could change.
Very quickly. The Hurricane Center issues advisories on these storms every 6 hours. 5 a.m., 11 a.m., 5 p.m., 11 p.m. And they could change in those 6 hours. Okay? It could change drastically in those 6 hours. As an example of the track today, last night it was coming like we saw yesterday. Overnight it changed to move to the west. So in 6 hours, these storms can change dramatically. So that's why I want to encourage everybody, please do not let your guard down. Continue your preparations that you would do if we were actually going to be hit by this storm. Continue those preparations. Make sure you have all those necessary supplies and so forth already with you so you would have them when needed. So just continue. Please do not let your guard down. We are not out of the woods. Okay? Any other questions? Okay, in closing, I would like to have Chairman Rao speak.
A lot of people have asked me already by email and phone, what's changed? Nothing. There's an old saying, something like there's no education in the second kick of a mule. We've been kicked quite a few times. The older of us have been kicked more than the younger. And if you don't learn from that, something's wrong with you. If anybody wants to hold me accountable for making decisions based on the fantastic experts we have in Charleston, Dorchester, Berkeley, and the state of South Carolina on hurricane and evacuation management, I'll be more than happy to accept service on the expenditure of taxpayer monies to save lives anytime, any place, anywhere. So the bottom line is nothing's changed. It won't change to me until that hurricane is so far in the other direction that we can declare no emergency whatsoever. So the bottom line is, if it changed that quickly from grid direct target to it's moving slightly west, we got 3.5 days left. It can sure change back. So please keep up your guard. We will. We're at OPCON 2, just like Berkeley and Dorchester. We track each other. We work with each other. We are in full collaboration. And quite frankly, we've been here. We've done this before. I don't want to do it again, but if we have to, we are in fact prepared. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much. We appreciate you coming to this press conference. I'd like to also now bring up Sasha so she can report for the Spanish community.
Buenas tardes. En este momento, el Centro de Operaciones de Emergencia de los Condados de Berkeley, Dorchester y Charleston están operando en condición operativa número 2. En estos momentos todavía el huracán puede llegar a nuestra área o mal tiempo por causa del huracán. La ruta prevista del huracán se ha desplazado varias veces y tenemos que estar preparados. Preste atención a las autoridades para orientación. Continúen sus preparativos desde los paquetes de suministro hasta los conocimientos de su ruta de evacuación si el gobernador emite la orden. En los condados estamos preparados para la apertura de los refugios si es necesario. Si tienes preguntas sobre el huracán, la línea de teléfono para información en español está disponible. El número es 843-746-3909. Y recuerde, solo llamar al 911 para emergencias. Gracias.
Again, thank you all for coming. We appreciate it.
All right, so representatives from Charleston County, Berkeley County, Dorchester County, the Sheriff's Office, the Highway Patrol, Hispanic community. Do I miss anybody else?
I think that's about it, but letting us all know that they are ready to go. If an evacuation is in fact ordered at some point this evening, shelters will then be open across the coastline, 52 exactly. We heard from Dorchester County they will have 7 shelters open, one of those pet friendly. Berkeley County, no pet friendly shelters, but 7 shelters open. Charleston County, we heard from yesterday, they have 5 shelters within the county, one of those being pet friendly.
Those are the 2 surprising things that jumped out at me, that Berkeley County does not have a pet friendly shelter, and that they will be closing down their hotline, their helpline tonight at 7 o'clock. So keep that in mind. Mitch Lucas did come back with Charleston County and said if you have a pet, come to Charleston County and we'll take care of you. As for what this storm is doing right now, let's check in with our meteorologist Sonia Stevens. She's been tracking Irma. The surprising track, I guess, coming out at 11 o'clock, 2 o'clock kind of confirms those models coming closer together in agreement.
Well, the 2 o'clock didn't update to the forecast cone. So we didn't get a full advisory package. We just got the latest on the latitude, longitude, the winds, and the pressure. So again, we're waiting for the 5 o'clock update to see if the track continues to hold true, if it continues to move westward. So really that's, I think, what we're waiting, because at 5 o'clock yesterday, we were firmly in the cone. And then as of 11 o'clock, that track shifted westward, and it continued to do so a little bit as we've headed throughout the day today, holding pretty steady at this point. So again, waiting to see what happens at 5 o'clock. At this point, Irma is still a Category 4 storm, but again, a very strong, powerful 4 with winds of 155 miles per hour. It's moving west at 14 miles per hour, and it's 225 miles east of Cuba. I'm not going to try to say that city. All right, the spaghetti models, again, they're getting in better agreement, again, with this more westerly track. And again, almost all of them have it moving over Florida, then moving inland through Georgia, and then continuing to gradually move off toward the northwest, more of a due northwest turn as we head through Georgia, to possibly even heading toward parts of the Tennessee Valley. So what we are watching, again, the model trends, and I was just looking at the 12Z GFS and the 12Z Euro, and they are in pretty good agreement at this point. So again, when they're in pretty good agreement, then our confidence grows a little bit, but still can't rule out some jogs in the forecast track. And again, I've heard some people say today, well, we're not in the cone. Can we let our guard down? No, you can't, because this is such a large storm. We're still going to get impacts. Now at this point, and again, I want to stress at this point, it looks like we're going to see maybe lower impacts, and I certainly hope that is the case. But again, I don't want to rule out maybe a jog to the east, although it doesn't look likely.